my Zoom. How's everybody doing? It is 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time in Dallas, Texas. Let me move this here.
And we are Cesar and Pam with cesarandpam.com.
And we want to help you grow your business, your career without losing your family in the process, specifically in the area of parenting. And today we're going to talk about a subject. We just had our Spanish Facebook Live, and man, it made me cry because a friend of mine, Eddie, was sharing about this. This year, 2020, with the whole pandemic and stuff, we have not been able to touch each other as much as we usually do. And that's the subject of this live. Do you touch your children, your kids? And if you don't, why not? And we're going to talk about this book really quick, just really briefly, the 5 love languages. And one of those love languages is physical touch and closeness. How important is it? And did you grow up in a household, in a home where affection was communicated all the time?
I feel like I did. I mean, I never think of it being a lack. I know when I married Cesar and we went to Mexico, I thought, wow, we don't kiss each other like down there, you know, but.
Down in Mexico, you mean? That's not funny.
In Mexico. Why don't? Oh, no.
Oh, man.
We don't.
Keep going.
Okay. Anyway.
But we do.
But we would always give each other hugs. You know, I felt like there was a lot of love and affection in my home. My dad's not super expressive, but I don't know. I just knew it was very meaningful. So I didn't feel a lack. I know that you did, you know. I remember hearing the story that when your grandfather told your father when he was holding you and you were just a baby, and he said, "What? Now are you gonna breastfeed him now?" And that your dad was never that affectionate and holding you and touching you after that. And like, and that's true. I mean, sorry. No, that's the opposite of what we've been talking about. We're talking about the blessing, and it's something that we want to pass down from generation to generation to our children. But instead, from your family, from your grandfather, he gave your father the impression that to be affectionate with his children would be weakness, right? Yeah.
So check it out. The first step is empathy, right? Like if you didn't receive something from your parents, well, look at how they grew up, right? Both my mom and dad didn't grow up in a very affectionate environment either. So how are they going to do something that they didn't know about? So that's what we're going to do with you today, and come to you not from a place of perfection, like, oh, look how we do it, but from a place of like, man, it's taken me years, decades to learn some of the things. Even this year, I've learned a lot of other insecurities I've had. And that is one of the greatest gifts that God gives us in having a family. When you have a family, it reveals things that you're struggling with. So if you have kids, you can write down in the comments how many kids do you have or the ages of them. And if this is something that you have struggled with, or that it's an awesome thing that was passed down to you from your parents, that physical closeness that is so necessary. In the series you were watching called The Chosen, I don't know if you all saw that series. It's an amazing series of the life of Jesus, and they portray him in such a human way. And I was so impacted by the scene of the leper who came to Jesus and the disciples were like, "Get away!" You know, a leper was not to be touched. Can you imagine nobody touching you for years? Very similar to what is happening this year with the pandemic. How many people are dying because of lack of physical contact? More negative effects are coming from that than from the disease itself. So anyway, the fact that Jesus touched him and healed him, I thought it was just so powerful. And that is something that we can do to each other, to our families, as we go through this year and as your kids grow up. I was reading about this story on the book, The Blessing, from a professor in a university. And first day of the class, of the year, of the semester, she would have all the students say their name, where they're from, something they liked about themselves, and something they didn't like about themselves. So they went through it until they got to the very end of the room, and there was one girl sitting in the very back. She had red hair covering her face, and When it came to her turn, she didn't say anything. So there was an awkward silence. Finally, the professor came and sat next to her and asked her, "So, honey, what's your name?" She said her name, Dorothy. And then she uncovered her hair and said, this is what I don't like about myself. And she had a birthmark that covered half of her face in a regular shape. And the professor said, "It's okay, honey. God and I still love you." And gave her a kiss right on the birthmark. And at that moment, the author says here that she cried uncontrollably for almost 20 minutes. Soon other students had gathered around her and were offering their comfort as well. When she finally could talk, dabbing tears from her eyes, she said to the professor, "I've wanted so much for someone to hug me and say what you said. Why couldn't my parents do that? My mother won't even touch my face."
Wow. Can you imagine? I mean, as a mother, I can't imagine not touching my child, but you know, I know you say this, that we don't know what was going on with that mom, you know, what she was feeling, and usually hurt people. That's a saying we learned from our pastor at our church. And it's just so true. You know, we are often focused on just like what affects us, but what's behind that? Hurt people.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go help a dog that is injured, the dog might bite you because it's scared. It has a defense mechanism. That's what I was talking about earlier, that this year I've been uncovering in myself so many defense mechanisms of protecting myself from rejection. So ask yourself, if you're not giving affection to your kids, maybe you don't mean to communicate rejection, but are you actually shielding yourself from feeling rejected? And so you don't even try to reach out. So before they reject you, you push away so you don't feel that rejection. And a sociologist, Sidney Durant, was doing a study in a coffee shop, in coffee shops around the world. This is before the pandemic this year. And the difference between cultures was staggering. In San Juan, Puerto Rico, people touch an average of 180 times per hour. In Paris, France, it was 110 times per hour. In Gainesville, Florida, 2 times per hour. And in London, England, 0 times per hour. So
I was just helping Marco, our 16-year-old, with his homework. He's taking Spanish in college, at the community college. And he has to watch these videos and then figure out what they were saying for comprehension. And he could hardly watch it because the girl came, and she's like a college-age girl, talking to this guy, inviting him to a party. And she just kept touching him, you know, and my son's like, you know what they say. But anyway, so we were laughing because then the next video, she was with another guy, and they always have the same people in these videos, and that was really her boyfriend. She's like, that wasn't even her boyfriend. I'm like, she's Latina. That's just the way they are. They touch a lot when they talk, you know. But he thought it definitely meant something else.
Yeah, that's funny. So what about your culture? I mean, not just your culture you grew up, but the culture in your own home. What was it like? You know, I was reading here, honey, that skin is the largest organ in the human body. We talked about it a few weeks ago when we talked about health and fitness. Your skin is actually an organ. It's a living organism, and it needs touch from head to toe. The outermost layer of our skin, called the epidermis, is predominantly made up of billions of little cells. I'm going to skip the medical language here. These release a chemical called, which activates receptors on the sensory nerve to convey the sensation of touch to the brain. When we hug or feel a friendly touch on our skin, our brains release oxytocin, which is a neuropeptide involved in increasing positive feel-good sensations of trust, emotional bonding, and social connection, while decreasing fear and anxiety responses in the brain at the same time. For this reason, oxytocin is affectionately known as the cuddle hormone. And we were just talking from a friend on a Spanish Facebook Live. A friend of mine, Eddie, he's from in Mexico where I grew up, and he was saying about how his mom, they were not allowed to touch her the last few months of her life, and she passed away. And he believes that part of that lack of connection, not able to touch her, was part of the reason why they lost her.
well, she said that that was a big part of her love language. She was always touching her kids, always just super affectionate.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, in one of this book called The Five Love Languages, we're not going to cover it in depth here, but I'm just going to mention that one of the 5 love languages is touch, physical, close, and touches, and how important it is. So here's another article talking about our desire for physical contact starts at birth. If a baby is born prematurely, the baby may be in the NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, but the mother is still asked to go a few times a day to hold the baby and put the baby on her chest, even if they're not breastfeeding. The doctor explained, we know that this bonding, this human to human touch is important for the growth of that child. So here it is. God created us to live with physical contact every day. And if we don't, it's going to hurt our relationships. It's going to hurt our well-being. Baby orphanages here in the US and also in the Western world have gone extinct because experts now understand the profound dangers they pose for infants. It's an article talking about orphanages. If a baby is born, oh, no, I'm sorry, I read that already. In their book, Born for Love, Why Empathy is Essential and Endangered, about 1/3 of babies placed in the barest orphanages can actually die as a result. One very early study found this death rate. Half of the rest, at least double the rate seen in the general population, will suffer from mental illness. Each month spent in an orphanage in early life reduces IQ and increases risk of behavioral and psychological problems. And this has been proven by the highest level of scientific proof we have, a randomized controlled trial. I wonder how many of the struggles that we have every day, honey, of just self-assurance, self-doubt, loneliness, depression, which right now abuse, physical abuse in the home, it's because of the lack of physical contact that we've been having.
Yeah. It reminds me, we had some friends come and live with us that lived in Mexico. And I know like we had already been in the States for probably
2010, like 12 years.
12 years. And so before that, we had lived in Mexico for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I know that just from that experience, living there for 8 years, people probably think that I'm a lot more affectionate. You know, you feel like you just need to greet everyone, say goodbye to everyone when you take out there. But they came and they lived in our home for a while, and it really impacted you because you saw how affectionate the father was with his sons and how the sons were with the father. And I think sometimes we just need to be reminded, you know, that just the way it is in our home isn't necessarily the way it has to stay, and we can make changes, maybe a little differently, right? You don't.
Yeah, right. So what I did, I try to establish. Okay, from now on, everybody's going to give a hug to each other in the morning. No, that's not how it works. I found
it's not military, but just do it. You know, your kids will respond. So be the one to initiate, and especially if they're older. You know, when they're young, a lot of times the kids do initiate and they're so loving. But when they're older, you know, you may not feel like they want it, but do it anyways. They need it. They need to know that you approve of them, that you love them, that you care about them. And so physical touch is a big way to show that.
Yeah. So let's finish this segment just by saying, if you or somebody you know needs coaching for parenting, we have a parenting coaching program, and we'd love to help you. Follow us in the different channels, Cesar and Pam in English, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and we would love to help you with not just your parenting, but also how to grow your business and your career without losing your family in the process. I've made a lot of mistakes in that area, and I would like to save you a lot of heartache by teaching you some of the things we've gone through. But let's finish up. So yeah, when our friends Luis and Kristen moved to Dallas, and I observed that, I think it created a frustration in me that I saw there was a better way, and I saw that I was short of it, you know. And I realized that I didn't have a mentor who could guide me, you know. And I think Luis was a great friend to me and a mentor in that area, where he was able to speak into my life and see something that I hadn't seen. So if in your case, you feel that you lack that personal touch with your children, you have not created a bond, don't lose hope. You can always invest into it. If they're young, make sure you go hug them every time. Something that I do with my youngest ones, I give them a hug and I hug them until they're done. When they pull away, then I pull away, but not before. And with the older ones, they may be like, oh, why, what do you want? Like, just give me a hug, man. I just need a hug from you. Okay, I need it. It's not for you, it's for me. Or Marco, my 16-year-old, asked him, can you crack my back? And, you know, he gets behind me and grabs my elbows. And just physical touch, invest into it, even if it's not natural for you. So, all right. So there's another aspect here that was really interesting. Research suggests a physiological pathway that produces this effect that we were talking about oh, here, did I mention this, Why Empathy is Essential? That book?
Yes.
I did it in English. I'm sorry, because we did it in Spanish already, yeah. Okay, research suggests that a physiological pathway that produces that effect, which was first understood as runt syndrome in mammals. In litters of puppies and kittens, even in rats and mice, oftentimes one or two animals are significantly smaller than the rest. The weakness exhibited by these animals signals the mother that they will have little chance of survival. To make sure her genes live on, she would be better off using her limited resources to make sure that the rest of the litter stays healthy. So the signaling works like this. In some species, each baby has a preferred nipple. The weak ones don't suck strongly enough to stimulate that nipple sufficiently. Consequently, the mother does not lick or nurture the baby that uses that nipple very much. In other species, the weak animals simply don't get access to the nipple, and the mother then ignores them. Unfortunately for the runts, a certain level of maternal licking and nuzzling is necessary to turn on the production of growth hormone in the brain. So without growth hormone, food isn't metabolized properly, and grown and developed in development do not progress. You can interrupt me anytime, honey, because I'm just reading here. Barring intervention, the runt will fail to thrive and essentially wither and die. In humans, the immune system seems to be profoundly affected, making these children especially vulnerable to all types of disease. Probably because not being nurtured is extremely stressful, and high levels of stress hormones can turn off the immune system. That's why corticosteroids, essentially stress hormones, are often used to treat autoimmune diseases, where too much immune response is the problem. And then it says here, finishes saying, in fact, failure to thrive in human infants has been shown to result from lack of individualized nurturing, physically affectionate parental care, whether in an orphanage or due to extreme parental neglect. Babies' brains expect that they will experience nearly constant physical touch, rocking and cuddling. Without it, they just don't grow. And without receiving kind, empathetic care, they are less likely to behave that way towards others as they get older. That's, you know, how much are we not growing because we don't have that exchange of love?
Yeah, and I was thinking about the 5 love languages. You know, you can take a test and see which is your preferred love language, and so even if physical touch isn't your number one, you still need it. It doesn't mean you don't need it. We all need it. But also to really think about your kids. Kids have love languages, and they do need physical touch. And some it's their number one, you know? So it's important, and it's a decision. It's not just a feeling that, oh, I don't feel like it, so I'm not going to give them that hug. No. You hug them, feelings are going to follow. So
the book talks about the concept of a full tank of love, right? And we receive it in different ways. So we need to become students of our kids, students of our spouse, and start investing and communicating love in the way they need to receive it. But regardless of the 5 love languages, personal close and touches is something that we need to do proactively as a choice, like you said. Even if it's not something that naturally you feel like you need. as much. I just finished with this paragraph of this study that I was reading. Even as adults, touch helps regulate our digestion and sleep, and even boosts our immune systems. Hugging can also help our bodies fight off infections, according to a 2014 study conducted by researchers at Carnegie Mellon University, where son went to did his master's. In the study, 406 participants responded to questionnaires and telephone interviews to evaluate their level of social support and frequency of hugs over the course of 14 consecutive evenings. After researchers intentionally exposed the participants to the cold virus to test their immune functions, they found that those who receive more hugs are somewhat protected from infection and illness-related symptoms. And physical contact with a close other reduces the effects of stress on biological markers thought to be precursors of disease.
Wow. Super important right now with the pandemic and everybody trying to stay 6 feet away, don't touch me, wear a mask, you know, make sure at home and with people that are, you consider, you know, close family, people that you're being around, that you are deliberately affectionate.
That's right. That's right. So thanks for logging in. If you need parenting coaching, we have a program for that. Send us a message. If you know somebody that needs parenting coaching, send us a message. We'd love to help you grow your business or career without losing your family in the process, specifically your parenting. And follow us on Cesar and Pam, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We would love to stay connected with you. Write down your comments right here, your thoughts, your questions. We'd love to help you in any way we can.
Yeah, we're Cesar and Pam with cesarandpam.com.
Thank you guys. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.